Achtung, Achtung, and season's greetings. Welcome to We Have Ways 12 Days of Christmas Guests. We're talking to a famous face about their personal relationship with the Second World War. Today we've got TV and radio host Dermot O'Leary. Achtung, Achtung, merrily on high. Welcome to We Have Ways of Making You Talk with me, Al Murray, and James Holland. And we're joined today for this episode, wherever it falls, because those familiar with this podcast will know we probably haven't planned any of this. No plan survives contact with this podcast, I think is a...
Well, I'm still. Every time you say "Achtung, Achtung," Christmas one, I keep thinking "Achtung, Achtung, hark the herald." Actions and all that kind of stuff, you know.
Oh, come all ye Achtungs. Okay, but who we joined by today, Jim?
Well, it's a super duper guest today. DJ, radio presenter, much loved TV host, documentary filmmaker, purveyor of very smooth moves on Instagram, and now I should say, soon to be published author of epic Second World War children's book. It's Dermot O'Leary. Dermot, lovely to see you.
Hey, guys. How's it going, chaps? This is very exciting. I always do this whenever we go on a podcast. I just end up asking more questions than I'm answering, but I'm always fascinated by your take. Have you guys been watching Rogue Heroes?
Yeah.
And what's your...
Yeah, of course.
What's been your take on it? Because I've only seen the first two episodes, just because I've been sort of out and about and I haven't really properly. I wanted to sit down and properly give it time as well.
Well, I can't speak for Jim here, but I think after the first two episodes, it goes up a gear quite completely, and also you're like tuned.
I think
into
it goes up
it.
a gear after the first 20 minutes, to be honest.
Yeah, right, okay, all right, okay. I think you're kind of tuned into it by the third one. You know, the sort of some people have called it khaki blinders, and it has got that. It has got that vibe, and I think once you've taken that on board, I loved it. I thought actually it really grew on me. I mean, you're the same, aren't you, Jim?
Yeah. I mean, you know, historically there's a whole host of problems, but is it really good fun? And are people beetling around the desert in Second World War stuff and firing lots of guns? Yes. Does that get a massive tick as far as I'm concerned? Absolutely. Do I enjoy watching lots of Jeeps and Morrises and what have you crossing the desert with Highway to Hell playing in the background? You betcha.
Yeah. I guess this is a wider conversation, isn't it, as to what is to, and James, you speak about this a lot, which is how valuable the historical accuracy is to an adaptation, and how important is that for you? Because you could go back to I remember I read an article about the film Zulu, and I think it was Hook's niece, I think, walked out of the premiere because he was a teetotal Methodist.
That's right. His family are completely outraged by his portrayal.
Right. Yeah, and similarly, I think Murdoch's family, from how he was portrayed in Titanic, were kind of,
or in the A-Team. I mean, Murdoch's family complaining about his portrayal in the A-Team.
He wasn't mad at all. He was a really sensible guy.
And the real Mr. T wasn't like that at all. Yeah, exactly. Well, I suppose. The bottom line is most people couldn't possibly care less. You know, it's a film and it's set in the past and it's either good or it isn't, or a TV series isn't either good or isn't. You know, they don't care that the sunglasses are wrong or there's too much effing and blinding and swearing and that Paddy Main wasn't like that. I mean, there's a piece in the paper today from Paddy Main's niece saying, you know, he was a really lovely guy and he was never in prison. He never beat up red caps. And he wasn't sort of, you know, okay, so he liked to drink occasionally, but actually, you know, he was a much softer, kinder, nicer person than portrayed. Absolutely, that's the case. And you know, Jack O'Connell's not really like the real Paddy Main at all.
Sure.
But sort of frankly, who cares? I really enjoyed it. It's just a TV series. And I also think it gets people interested in the subject. You know, that's a series that's aimed at 15 to 30-year-olds and to be enjoyed by 50-pluses.
And it's being watched by 15 to 30-year-olds in vast amounts, apparently. So it's hit the bullseye in that respect.
Bring it on, is all I can say. I mean, I just think it's absolutely fantastic, and the more the merrier. And I'm absolutely delighted to hear from Ben McIntyre that there's going to be certainly 2 series and they're aiming for 4.
Oh, that's great. That's really good. Yeah, no, I think I pretty much agree with everything you said. I mean, I think the one thing I haven't seen the the whole series yet. I'm not qualified to sort of make this statement, so I'm just sort of more asking the question. When I read the book, there's quite a lot of sad stories in the book about anything from kind of grief to, you know, this repressed feelings and homosexuality and, you know, or otherwise, or just, you know, the kind of deep personal relations. Does the TV series go into that later on?
Yeah, they're certainly wrestling with one of the dramatic threads of it is, what does these guys really want to fight, but what does it actually do to them in the end? What's the actual cost? And for all their desire to take it to the enemy, what's that doing to them? And I think that very much is its dramatic material. I mean, there's a bit where Sterling describes Main as sulking like Achilles in his tent. So that story of the brooding warrior is as old as storytelling. So
and that is absolutely how he's portrayed, isn't he? But actually, Paddy Main just wasn't like that at all. Yeah. He wasn't a brooding Achilles.
No,
he was the guy who's sort of driving the whole thing forward, really.
Yeah, but you've got a drama to make here, you know, like.
Yeah, exactly. And I think the actors are brilliant. I think Stephen Knight's done a great job. It'd be great. Have you guys had Stephen Knight on? You should get him on.
We should get him on.
We asked him, actually, and he told us he could
make it. Yeah. Yeah, we'll have to try again.
Anyway, we'll give it another go. I agree. It would be interesting to get him on. But Dermot, how are you? I mean, you know,
I'm very good.
Very lucky to read an early copy of Linus the Swift, which is just fantastic.
Thank you, mate. Thanks. It's a sort of working title in the moment. So the backstory, I haven't sort of announced anything, but I've sort of.
Right. Well, you heard it first here.
Well, I'm not that I'm really a particular announcer, but you know, you're sort of. You know, my publishers don't even know I'm doing this, but my publishers are very wait and see, and we'll announce it next year. So I'm a bit more blabbermouth than that. But I've so I spent the best part of the year in my sort of time I've had writing children's fiction about the Second World War.
Wow.
And hopefully I'd like to do more and try and it's really interesting because. You know, the kids' fiction I've written up to now, 5 books, is about my cat, and it's about my cat being essentially a member of an ancient order of international ninjas who are kind of placed in Wisconsin with every world leader to make sure they don't do anything silly and stupid through a mantra of purrs, paws, and claws. And Larry the 10 Downing Street is the head of the UK branch of the International Ninjas, and my cat is his deputy. So that's kind of and it started as a kind of, isn't this a fun idea? And now I've done 5 books and I really, really enjoy doing them. And so for the last book in the deal, my publisher said, "Would you fancy doing something different?" And I said, "Yeah, I'd love to. I'd love to write some wartime fiction for kids." Then what's really interesting, and James, you've been such a great help with some of the facts and the chronology. And whatnot. But what's interesting is you realise you have to start writing about things like loss, and because you can only kind of sugarcoat it. Yeah, it's middle grade fiction, which is 7 to 10, but really it's kind of 7 to 11, 12 in my experience. And you realise you can't not write about things like that, because then you just completely sanitise the whole thing. But at the same time, you have to temper that. So. So it's set in the Second World War and it kind of around the Battle of Britain. And
set in the summer to beat all summers.
Right, and unbeknownst to us, the animals are kind of on our behalf, and that's as much as I can say about my publisher slapping my wrist. Not that anyone's listening to this going, "My God, this is going to change the way I live my life." It's just that I just feel like I'm doing my poor publisher a disservice by talking too much about it. But I guess that the nuts of it was, and I love doing it, and I felt I had enough knowledge about the subject to write from a glorious amateur's point of view. But that was the thing that kind of struck me was, hang on a minute, some of these characters aren't going to make it, and how do I write that? And how do I write that in a sensitive way? And how do I write that in a way that that children are going to it's not going to be traumatizing for them, but you know, I can't kind of shy away from that, because if you decide to write in the context of war, then you have to write, you know, war with all its warts, you know.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I've got to say, what I think it works. It just works, and the reason it works, I know we can't talk about it too much, but come on again and talk about it probably. I
really would love to.
Where it works really well is it's really charming. It's very touching. There's some really exciting bits in it, but also it's sort of weirdly plausible. I mean, I know we're talking about sort of birds and animals, and birds particularly, but when you're doing a sort of fantasy children's book, you're suspending disbelief, aren't you? But even when you're suspending disbelief, you still got to kind of believe that in a secret special world it could work, and that's the point. It does fit whereas in a way that sort of some children's books just don't, and this does, I think that's lovely.
Thank you, mate. I mean, I think you can never. Like I said, the first book I just had an idea, and it was just the fact it was about my cat, which lent itself to being a children's book. I didn't set out to write children's fiction, and I sort of think that's the best way to go about it, in the sense of when I was growing up, the TV I wanted to watch wasn't TV that was aimed at children. It was TV that children watched that you thought was kind of a little bit naughty to watch. Do you know what I mean? It's all the sort of the aspirational stuff. And I think the same thing can be said about children's writing, is that, that's why they love the kind of more subversive stuff. And when you go out on book tours and to schools, they know their stuff. I mean, I've written 5 books, and the kids that love them know them better than I do. So they'll come up and say, hey, in chapter 2, book 3, you said that Toto's favourite cheese was camembert, but actually in book 5, and you're going, oh God,
yeah.
And they've got you over the gun wheel, and you're just thinking, oh man, completely. Yeah.
That's so funny. I remember I did two young adult novels, and the only difference between that and an adult action adventure novel set in the Second World War was that there was less swearing but more violence.
Right.
What Second World War kids fiction? I mean, did you go and look at some to think, where's it pitched? Because I mean, the book I remember from when I was at school was The Machine Gunners, which is that story of.
Oh, that's a brilliant.
Which is
book,
an amazing book. Do you know that book, Jim?
No. Where have I been?
So it's about a bomber that crashes it's in the northeast somewhere, I think.
It's in Hull or something.
In Hull or somewhere. And this bomber crashes, and these kids find the bomber, and they find a machine gun in the bomber. And then they also find a crewman who's survived the crash, and they hide him and look after him.
Is he German?
Yeah. And they build a little fortress. And in the end, I think there's an incident with some Polish soldiers, and they don't know if they're Germans or what, right? So it's a fantastic book. It's a book with ambivalence in it, and it makes you think about who really are the good guys, and you're looking at it from the kids' point of view. And it's really good. I'm surprised you don't know it, actually, Jim.
They also did a great adaptation when we were kids, really, wasn't it? And it was on, what was then, I suppose, CBBC, which is just on the BBC, which was just, but it was on kind of 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock in the afternoon. Yeah. Oh, it's a marvellous book. I
remember Dick Turpin being on at 5 o'clock on it.
Same ballpark.
Richard O'Sullivan, who's absolutely legendary. I just don't remember that one.
Funny enough, I live next to, if I look out there, I live really around the corner from the Spaniards Inn pub, where Dick Turpin famously his dad was. I mean, it's one of those. I mean, they say Dickens drank there as well. It's like one of those pubs. Every pub you go into that's sort of like more
and
than
Oliver Reed,
350 years old or something. They go, Dickens wrote like Expectations over there or something, like did he? But it's still a fascinating pub. I did a little bit out, if I'm honest, but I try not to, when I write, try not to read too much, because it's you read really good stuff, and then it intimidates you, and then you think, oh God, I don't want to copy it. So But for me, it was, I think I spoke to you about this before, there was this kind of really old non-PC cartoon called Warlord when I was a kid, and I was obsessed with Warlord. And for all its kind of, as non-PC as it was, I mean, it was probably written in the 70s, so it wasn't that far after the war. But the stories were so vivid and the illustrations were so brilliant. So there were all these kind of characters as kind of reoccurring characters as well. They had these great standalones, but they had these great reoccurring characters. So one was codename Warlord, who was this kind of sort of a sort of SOE agent or something like that. He was like a special ops kind of guy, which is kind of kind of Bond style. And there was a guy called Union Jack Jackson who was and Union Jack Jackson was always kind of in hanging around. Somehow got kind of seconded to this Marine battalion in the East with these Americans. And there was also really interesting because it used very antiquated language, and it was it wasn't, it was of its time, but at the same time, it was quite progressive because some of the stories were German based, and some of them were this kind of. I remember one story was about this Ethiopian soldier.
Wow.
Yeah, it was, so in many ways it was, and that kind of opened my eyes to wartime fiction when I was a kid. And then I think my dad just sort of like blithely picked one up and just saw all this kind of war and death and all this, like, and his 8-year-old was reading it and just went, Jesus Christ, can't you just get the Beano? So I think my poor dad, who's the loveliest guy, and also is another huge history nut, my father. But at the time, I think, understandably and quite rightly, thought it was a bit too graphic for me. So the subscription was kind of cancelled, and then it was Dennis the Menace and Nasher.
Well, that's good as well. It wasn't Battle of Britain. Where's Battle of Britain? Was he in Warlord?
I don't know, but I mean, I've just.
I don't think he might have been Commando. I think
you got Union Jack Jackson, Codename Warlord, Killer Kane, Killer
Kane was Battle of Britain.
Squadron Leader, Killer Kane, Battle of Britain. That's right. Kampfgruppe Falcon.
Yeah.
Wolverine, Iron Annie, The Adventures of Kurt Stallman and his Ju-52.
That was great because the Ju-52 was brilliant because it was kind of almost the most boring story because it was all just like taking supplies to the front and then something would happen to them and they'd have to stick a couple of guns on it or like, but it was largely just about a supply plane. It was brilliant.
That's so funny. But Dermot, a friend of ours, Guy Walters, he's a historian and his son is now all sort of grown up and got long hair and is a sort of grunge rocker. But when he was 5 or 6, he was just obsessed with World War II planes. And he just used to talk about planes and Spitfires and so on all the time. And Guy was with Will walking down a street and this bloke just stopped and said, I'm sorry, did your son just say Messerschmitt? And he was like 4 at the time. Yeah, it was really funny.
Speaking of which, I was down in Goodwood. I did my first ever revival this year, and which I loved.
Never been. Was it good?
Oh my God, you'd love it.
I know. I'm always doing something else.
But the planes were incredible. Like they had these. I mean, and you've got the sort of the classics, but then. Like there was a Catalina there, and and there's a couple of like old World War II, really kind of like there was a couple of like really small transport planes that would have ferried the generals around. I can't quite remember the names of them, but they were like spotting planes almost.
Osters and
that's exactly it.
Yeah.
And actually, what's the fascinating thing is speaking to the guys that own them and fly them. The Oster, for example, he just said, I can't get my, it's quite a hard plane to fly. It's quite difficult, not particularly enjoyable plane to fly, but I love it because it's, I'm bringing history alive. And, and he sort of, and doesn't even go that fast. Like, sort of 60, 70
But you know John Romain, don't you? You've met John
very
Romain.
well, yeah. I love
John. So John's got, he's got his Blenheim.
Yeah, that's why I really want to go up in that Blenheim.
Oh my God. It's, because it's such a sort of ugly dog on the ground.
Yeah.
But when you see it flying, it's unbelievably graceful for a twin-engine aircraft. It really is smooth. It makes a lovely purr. There's I can't remember what the engines it's got in it, but it makes a really lovely purr, and it's much quicker than you think. Much more. It's much more sort of manoeuvrable than you'd think. And it's really graceful. It's
gorgeous, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, it is absolutely gorgeous.
How long have they had that flying, Jim?
3 or 4 years, maybe.
Right. Wow.
So it's
maybe a bit longer now.
I don't know if you guys know, because it's obviously so many planes were produced. Is there a world where someone puts together a Wellington and gets it airborne, or is that just
it's cost? Well, the problem is when you've got if you're doing a single plane. There's no precedent because a lot of the blueprints and stuff just don't exist. So you've got to kind of work it all out, and you can gather various blueprints and stuff, but it's really hard. And as you well know, Dermot, when you're putting making one of these planes together, they're basically 90% brand new. So everything has to be made. So the reason why there's so many Spitfires, obviously, is because it's iconic and beautiful and all the rest of it. But now lots of them have done it. So there's the expertise, there's the knowledge. The jigs, there's all that kind of stuff to make it happen.
They've got round the fact they're not standard in the way they're made because they were built in sort of giant workshops rather than on production lines. So every Spitfire essentially is different, and they've figured out their way around that now by basically making them. They can make them all different as well. That's the thing. So if you go to Peter Monk's place in Biggin Hill, I mean they're doing the same thing. They're riveting. They're putting each rivet in individually. Drilling each hole individually, rather than there's a jig. I mean, it's the most amazing thing. So if you were building a Wellington, you'd basically be reverse engineering one from scratch from what you think they must be like, from what's left of the blueprint.
So the cost of that is absolutely enormous. And then you got it. So it's interesting because there's this guy called Rob's Lamplighter I know, and he's got an incredibly original Messerschmitt 109E, an ML, which is and it served in the Spanish Civil War. So it is the oldest flying Second World War fighter plane there is. And he doesn't think he's getting close to finishing it, and his plan is to then sell it. And he doesn't think anyone will ever fly it, even though it's airworthy, because it's so rare, it's so precious. And at some point, someone's got to get in it and take that leap of faith. And if you're buying it, are you going to fly it, or are you going to get a pilot to fly it? And if a pilot's going to fly it, well, why would you risk it? Because you're not going to get any fun out of it.
Any two-seater 109s, like they have done in
there's some Bouchons, yeah.
There's some Bouchons about, yeah.
Have you been up?
The Bouchons are the post-war Spanish-built under license, but with a Merlin engine. And there's just something that's fundamentally wrong about that.
Keeping it old school, yeah. But they haven't converted any originals for two-seaters.
No.
I mean, there's the Messerschmitts are that much rarer, aren't they? And
they're very rare.
They're very, very rare. And anyway, it's mainly Spitfires, isn't it? Because Spitfires are the first plane anyone thinks of.
I know, but it's just, I'm with you. I mean, it'd be lovely to see a Wellington fly. It'd be lovely to see a Tempest and a Typhoon fly. I mean, there's a plan to get a Typhoon up in the air, but it's costing them so much money to get it done.
Will they get that Dornier up that they retrieved from the North Sea? Is that
No.
Well, they're not. Are they just going to put that in a museum? Or?
Yeah, that's at Cosford. It's amazing to see. It's absolutely amazing.
Absolutely incredible. Yeah,
it is amazing.
Sort of thing where they've got, they had to bathe it to reverse the corrosion and all that sort of stuff.
That's right. Yeah,
leave the parts in a tank for a year while it kind of like re-knotted itself. The metal sort of configures itself. It is an amazing thing, but they never get that airworthy. I think they're gonna sort of do it a little like the Halifax at Hendon, where it's kind of half and half.
Oh, okay, yeah.
You can see what it was like.
But if you could own one fighter plane, for one warbird, what would it be? I mean, is it Spitfire? I mean, would you?
I don't think Spitfire counts, because I think Spitfire, everyone would own a Spitfire. So maybe can I have one as well as a Spitfire?
Yeah, you're right. A second one. If you buy one, get one free.
Okay. Let's start. We all get a Spitfire. That's your start. So
I'm not one of those guys you meet at Goodwood and you go, what do you own? And he goes, I got that one and there's that one over there.
Oh God, those people. Yeah,
they're amazing. Okay, so I'm one of those guys.
I'd go for a Mosquito.
Do you know what I would go for?
That's very strong.
I would go for a US Navy Corsair.
Oh,
I love. Once again, Warlord. It was Yeah. I think it was Kelly's Heroes or one of those guys.
They are pretty sexy, aren't they? I mean, let's face it.
Yeah. I think, and I love the Navy livery of the Second World War. The US Navy livery was so beautiful.
That lovely, beautiful blue.
Exactly that, yeah.
Yeah. And I love those photos. You can still get the colour photographs that you can find.
Yeah.
And there's some which are unbelievably vivid. They look like they were taken yesterday, and they look perfect. I've got to say, I would definitely go for the P-51 Mustang.
Yeah, beautiful, isn't it?
I just think it'd be great. Particularly a two-seater. It looks like a one-seater, so it doesn't look like it's been bastardized. But you can take someone up; it'd just be great.
I've got a Christmas question for you guys. I know. What would be your? Doesn't necessarily have to be your favourite, but what would be your one or top three Christmas wartime films that you absolutely every year have to watch?
Well, I mean, a bridge too far for me. Well, I suppose Where Eagles Dare, actually, yeah. The thigh slapping, yeah. No, I got that wrong. Yeah, Where Eagles Dare. I think it's...
Where Eagles Dare's one. Where Eagles Dare's almost like the Spitfire.
Down, Colonel.
I mean, in a way, it's a Santa Claus story, isn't it? They get into the building, they leave some presents, and
they set the chimney alight.
So what you're saying is Where Eagles Dare is really a Christmas fable.
It is a Christmas fable.
Blow everything up.
What I love about
if you've been naughty, you get gunned down. If you've been nice, you escape on the bus
with the never-ending schmeiser.
My favourite thing about Where Eagles Dare is how many you meet another Eagles Dare fan, because how many lines have sort of permeated normal conversation in everyday life. So the guy that sort of dresses me for like big entertainment shows, who's just become a mate, is a guy called Tom Stubbs. And we quite often, if one of us is passing the phone, like we've been together for like 15 years now, whatever, one of us passing a phone to the other one, we will go through the rigmarole of that old German general that gets woken up that has to vouch for, for Richard Burton. And we say, here's that, tell him he's a renegade.
Schmidt.
Tell him he's a renegade. Oh, yeah, that's Stubbsy for sure. Yeah.
Do you know they had Clint Eastwood's German officers' tunic was up for sale the other day?
No way.
Really? How much did it go for?
I don't know, but it was on for something like $28,000 or something.
Jesus.
Yeah, it's quite a lot of money.
Still.
Quite a lot of money.
You'd wear that while flying your Corsair.
Your Mustang or your Corsair,
exactly.
wouldn't you?
Okay, so Where Eagle's there. Are you great escapers when it comes to Christmas, or is that more of a rainy bank holiday?
I'm Battle of Britain, definitely.
You go Battle of Britain the whole.
Definitely Battle of Britain. Yeah, I love it. I love the sound of the skylarks over the thing where they're all sitting in their deck chairs. I love all the one-liners. I like anticipating the one-liners. Skipper hates Jerry's. I love all that.
Yeah.
It's got Christopher Plummer in it. You know, it's got Robert Shaw in it. It's got all those guys that just was so brilliant in those films in the 60s and 70s. And it's got Michael Caine.
Bridge over the River Kwai.
It's a beaut.
Yeah, that's a bit of a Hardy perennial.
That's for in between Christmas and New Year when you're feeling a bit listless and you're wondering what the point of it is.
You just want to sort of sit back a little bit.
Sit back a little bit and also feel that you've maybe eaten too much whilst watching this film of people starving on the Burma Railway. And
there are odd, weird light moments in that film as well. There are. The whole kind of romance story halfway through, sort of like kind of quite disarming, isn't it?
Yeah.
But Dermot, have you got? I mean, okay, so Where Eagle's Day is right up there. I mean, Al and I have just had another look at The Cruel Sea. And trust me, that film is absolutely amazing. And if you haven't seen it in the last 10 years, it deserves another outing.
Yeah.
Because you know a bit more about the Second World War than you did 10 years ago. And
exactly.
you will appreciate it that much more. And everyone in it was basically in the war. And so they're sort of talking, not necessarily from Royal Naval experience, but they're talking from having served in the Second World War experience.
Yeah.
And everything in it is real. So it is a real corvette. It's a real frigate that they're filming with. And it just smacks of authenticity.
Yeah, Donald Sinden's marvellous in that film, isn't he?
He's fantastic, isn't he? And also in a way that you think, is that real? You know,
Donald Sinden.
Is that the same Donald Sinden?
Exactly.
Is it? It can't be. Because, you know, if you know him from Never the Twain and Just a Minute or it, you know, like, hang on a minute, that can't possibly be the same guy.
And Virginia McKenna.
Yeah.
I found the last series of Das Boot I really enjoyed, you know, the third series. I mean, I know it was you know, when you kind of, you know, look, drama devours plots. So, yeah, and the SAS boys will find this if they're commissioning 4 series. By the time you get to the 4th, drama just eats it up. So you've got to come up with new stuff. And I actually thought the way they did the kind of the grief of the captain in the third series of Das Boot and the fact that he had this kind of bloodlust and wanted to get out there, and it destroyed his relationship with his wife, played by Jo Hartley, a brilliant actress. I thought it was really good.
Yeah. Oh, I thought it was terrific. I loved it. And I haven't
seen it. I haven't seen the latest
they're all
one.
Suitably grimy and
Christmas tree,
you know, and all that sort of stuff. I thought
it's really good out. And James, you'll love it because, you know, there's this. It's based sort of in neutral Portugal, so there's a real kind of nice. Like lovely kind of Le Carré espionage kind of style.
Yeah. Oh, I like all that. Okay, I'm definitely watching it. Great, good tip. I just, do you know what? It had gone out of my consciousness, but now it's been firmly put back in it. So that's good. During the 12 days of Christmas, that's what I'll be watching.
Well, thanks so much for coming on to chat.
It's just nice to catch up, boys. I could come on just like literally just shoot the shit all day with you.
But we'll get you back when the book's out. When
yes,
you're published.
I'd love that, and hopefully
I'll be able
to see you properly and come down to one of your wonderful festivals as well. It'd be great.
Well, we'd love to see that. We'd love to see that.
Yeah.
September 23.
Yes, brilliant. I'd look forward to it.
It's a pleasure. We've been talking to Dermot O'Leary. We'll see you all very soon. Bye-bye.
Cheerio.